All right, this is Kat Rowalt with the Christian Reporter News, and we're going to do a follow-up interview with Ms. Farmer in regard to the memorandum she delivered to the City of San Angelo last Monday, September 9th. Since we broke this story last Thursday evening, what kind of response have you had from the citizens of San Angelo?
Good. Telling me it's a good job. They appreciated the fact that I came forward with the news. The truth, and it has been good. There has not been any phone call or email or a text message that has been of a bad nature.
Wonderful. I'd like to touch on a few things we did not discuss in our first interview. You presented your memorandum to the city on Monday morning, and it included a deadline of Wednesday, September the 11th, for a reply from the city manager as to how he plans to handle correcting the matter and what disciplinary action he had planned. Did you hear from Daniel Valenzuela during that time period?
Not until 5 on Wednesday evening, 5, and I was on the phone and in traffic, and I saw the caller ID when I got off the phone that it was him. Checked the messages. Since I was driving in traffic, there were no messages.
Okay, so no message was left on your voicemail.
Well, there was about 8:30 that night. There was a message left on my cell phone from Mr. Valenzuela, and I still have it. You're more than welcome to listen to it. That said that the council had met and they had come to a decision, and there was nothing other than that. Just council has met. They've made a decision.
When would they have met?
Well, I would have to assume that they were talking about in the second executive session that was called, that was not on the agenda from the first meeting, because we recessed the first executive session and went back to general session to finish the council meeting, and then it was announced that there was a follow-up or a second executive session.
Okay.
And this was at almost 6 o'clock, I believe, that Tuesday evening.
Okay. Based on interviews Mr. Valenzuela has given the television station and newspaper, both entities, he's under the impression that this was simply an oversight and a detail that kind of fell through the cracks. Why do you believe this is not the situation in this case?
Well, because it's a repeat of Furniture Gate, if you want to call it that. It's the same type handling and of a situation before, that it is a repeat, and the fact that staff refused me the documents from the very beginning. Why? If it was a simple oversight, as he states, he gave us a letter on August 20th, and he stated that I see this as an oversight and not willful negligence on the part of the administration. Okay, then why? Why refuse to let me see the documents?
Okay. Before we get into that, I want to go back to another thing, too, that was in today's newspaper. Mayor Morrison is quoted in the San Angelo Standard-Times this morning, September the 15th, saying, and quoting from the San Angelo Standard-Times article, it says, Mayor Dwayne Morrison, who was a city council member when the partnership was created, adamantly disagreed with Farmer's allegations. He says there was absolutely no cover-up at all, he said Friday. We have been dealing with this for the last 4 or 5 meetings. We finally made a decision as a council last week when we felt like we knew what happened and why. At that meeting, September 3rd, the council held 2 executive sessions, adjourning the first one to finish the public agenda, then convening again. Morrison said, we brought in consultants to help us understand this, and they briefed the council. We came back at 2:15, and I said, we're not through, we'll finish the regular meeting. Then we went back into executive session, and Charlotte did not show up. She had left, never said a word to anybody, This was her deal. She wanted this, and she did not even show up. Morrison said the 6 of us went ahead, listened, and made a decision. That decision will be disclosed at the next council meeting coming Tuesday, he said. That's a quote out of the Standard Times. Ms. Farmer, why did you choose not to go back to that second executive session, if I may ask?
Well, it wasn't posted. In my mind, it's an illegal meeting. We ended the first executive session with the disagreement, my part thinking that it was more than just an oversight, and the people that, the attorney and the engineering firm on this West Texas project were there to discuss what information we didn't get to begin with and they were not aware of, and cleared it up in their minds. But the discussion, as I understand from the comment here, that a decision had been made, if that is a decision referring to what they're going to do with the West Texas Partnership, then that's on the agenda. If it's a decision that had been made with the other council members to discuss whatever punishment or whatever standard that we're going to take from this era, whatever place it, that wasn't on the agenda. And I felt like that's what they wanted to talk about. It's not posted on the agenda, and that there are stiff penalties provided for meeting in closed session on a subject that is not posted in the agenda.
Okay.
And I felt like that's what it was about.
Was this topic that was posted in the minutes, or not the minutes, the agenda, and for the executive session, was that all totally discussed in that first session that you attended?
Yes.
And was it concluded?
It was concluded that we, the council, were not aware. We, the council, had other agreements out there that we'd never seen or were aware, and it was concluded that this first phase is what I understood, that the final payment, the invoice that had been sent, would have to be paid. That was all on the agenda.
Okay. You mentioned you had a letter, you were referring to it a second ago, from Mr. Valenzuela that he had presented to the council people, and you wanted to share this letter.
Well, in the letter to us on August 20th, at that council meeting, although the limit was surpassed, I see this as an oversight and not willful negligence on the part of the administration. The expenditures to try to meet the needs of the community, the 3 partner cities shared 3-way in the expenditures. That was his finding. That told me that there was nothing in here about what he plans to do to rectify it from ever happening again, since this was the second occurrence that I'm aware of that this has happened. There was nothing in there as to how he would deal with rectifying the problem or any sort of discipline that should or could be taken. It gives all the appearance that there will be no discipline, and there's no instructions as how he's going to keep it from happening again.
Okay. What does the rest of the letter say?
He basically cites everything that I prepared and gave to them. City Council approved $100,000 not to exceed in expenditures in association with the interlocal agreement with the Tri-Cities, Abilene, Midland, San Angelo, on 3/22/11. I'd already told him that. The $100,000 limit was surpassed. Now, he says on May 25th of 2012, and if you look at the guidelines, the stuff that I sent, staff clearly knew on October 16th, I believe it was, 2011, that amount clearly exceeded what the City Council had approved. They were made aware of the new contracts, call them new contracts, or the contracts that had been provided by the engineers and the attorneys, and that date is the October 2011 meeting, so that is when it surpassed in approval amounts. Not in payment amounts, but in approval amounts, that they were made aware that it was going to well exceed $100,000.
Okay. Would it be normal operating procedures for city staff to make financial decisions without council's direction?
On expenditures?
Yes.
Well, no. I mean, that would be carte blanche throughout whatever they wanted to do and go spend whatever they wanted to or felt they needed to do to get things done. No, there's always a limit.
So projects where money's involved normally have a dollar amount to work within. So even if the statement is they didn't know there was a limit, there's always a limit. And so they should have, someone should have sought out that limit to know what to work within.
Yes.
Okay. The city council agendas are usually posted by 5 p.m. on Fridays, but the agenda for this coming Tuesday was not posted until after 6:30 p.m. on Friday. There were some new items that were added at the last minute, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me get a bit of clarity here, Ms. Farmer. Agenda items are put initially on a draft agenda almost immediately after one council meeting ends, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any council person, mayor, city manager, or even city staff can add an item anytime during the draft time, correct?
Correct. As long as they really and truly should have it to the city clerk before 5 p.m. Friday. She really should receive them by Wednesday 5 p.m. at the latest, in all fairness, to accurately prepare the document.
Okay. How many draft versions do you normally receive between council meetings?
Just one.
Just one. New items for an agenda are discussed at the conclusion of each council meeting so staff knows what to begin to work on, correct?
Correct.
Anything out of an executive meeting that would be planned for the following council meeting to be on the agenda would be listed right away, correct?
Should be, if council has come out of executive session and stated what they were going to act on and what if they made a decision, which decisions are not supposed to be made in executive session. You cannot vote in executive session. You must come back out, announce what you're going to do, and it's got to comply with what was on the executive session agenda before you do that. And by this announcement not being made on the September 3rd, it's possible that someone noted that what they were discussing wasn't even on the agenda, and they've got to get it on the agenda now before they can announce their decision.
Okay. On the agenda as it is set now, item that's got the number 13, as it reads today, was that on your draft agenda, or was that one of these new things that was added at the last minute?
I can look. I have my draft agenda. Well, yes, it is.
Okay. So is that the draft agenda or is that the final agenda that you're
This
looking
is the
at?
draft agenda, but what it's saying is consideration of authorizing funding for the city proportionate share of cost incurred for services pursuant to the interlocal agreement between cities of Abilene, Midland, San Angelo Water Partnership effective April 9th. And if you looked back on the September 3rd agenda, that exact topic was not on the materials to be discussed in executive session.
Okay.
Not the way it reads now.
Okay. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, after a short break, let's get back. Okay, we were talking about agenda item, we'll call it 13 because that's what, was it 13 on your?
Yes.
Okay, on the draft. All right. If you would read the way it is on the draft again, and then I'll read the way it is on the final agenda and we'll go from there, if you would start.
Okay, on the draft, item 13 reads, in its 3 lines, it says consideration of authorizing funding for cities' proportionate share of cost incurred for services pursuant to the interlocal agreement between cities of Abilene, Midland, and San Angelo, and in parentheses, West Texas Partnership, effective April 9th, 2011, and requested by Mayor Morrison. And then this was revised 9/12 at 11:18, which was Thursday, and it was revised for the Friday final agenda that came out. Item 13 is now 5 lines. Consideration of authorizing funding and payment for city's proportionate share of cost incurred for services pursuant to the interlocal agreement between cities of Abilene, Midland, and San Angelo, effective April 9th, 2009, April 9th, 2011, in parentheses, West Texas Water Partnership, and consideration of ratifying all actions already taken and payments made pursuant to said interlocal agreement since its effective date and any action connection thereto, requested by Mayor Morrison.
Okay, let me ask you, is this agenda item asking the now current city council to condone the unauthorized spending and actions of the city staff over the last 2.5 years, in your opinion?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And the way it's worded, or was worded, on September 3rd executive session, I did not feel any further conversation and where it was going after we had heard from the attorney from Austin and the engineer from Abilene. We had covered everything that was on the agenda. Anything further could only be kept at what was on the agenda, so anything with making a decision, as Mayor Morrison states in here, as to how to handle it and what disciplinary action. I'll read you the quote in the TML handbook.
Okay.
There are stiff penalties are provided for violations of the law. A council member or any other person who participates in an illegal closed meeting can be punished by a fine of $100 to $500 and confinement in the county jail for 1 to 6 months or both. The same penalty can be applied to a council member who circumvents the requirements of law by using the telephone, email, or to poll other council members, or who meet with them individually to deliberate over some matter of city business in order to arrive at a decision. And that's is curious to me. If a decision was made but yet it wasn't discussed, couldn't be discussed because it wasn't on the agenda, then that's why the item is now appearing on the agenda to be discussed and to handled, because this item, such as it reads now, was not a part of the September 3rd council meeting. So they couldn't discuss it. They couldn't discuss it in executive session according to what is allowed in the law under executive session. And I didn't want to be a part of anything that would be illegal, that hadn't been posted for the 72 hours prior to.
Okay, so that's the reason you didn't attend that second executive session. Okay, to date, if my memory serves me well, the total amount that the city staff has committed the citizens of San Angelo to is $1,250,000, more or less, when only $100,000 was the initial intention, even quoting the comment the Standard Times had per the former mayor, Mayor New. Are we purchasing any water to drink with these monies?
No.
Do you plan to follow up with the district attorney, George McCrae, on this matter and pursue legal action if necessary?
Well, yes, I will follow up with him. I have a duty since I have done this. And, you know, in reading the way the law states, of the way it has to be presented, I didn't feel like that happened. And I don't do public embarrassments and I'm not running the show to say this was handled wrong or right as far as procedure. But it needs to be properly vetted and discussed properly as the agenda states.
So you're totally convinced that this was not a simple oversight, but an intentional cover-up of some kind by some staff members' actions?
Well, absolutely. What other reason would the city manager or the chief financial officer, what reason would they have for refusing to let me see the documents that committed us to this amount of money. When $100,000 was all that was approved, they didn't bring it back and say, hey, this is going to take more money than we first. They didn't give us the opportunity to make that decision. They made it, whoever they were. But when I came on to the information in January of this year, February of this year, March and April of this year, why weren't they forthcoming with the documents as to what this is? Because the documents clearly state in the agreements that were prepared by outside parties that the first phase, 330 and 395, which is a $725,000, was for the first phase. And then the second phase takes us to an additional 2.6 or to $3 million to be divided equally between the cities. So your calculation, when you divide that out by the 3, is us. And that's the commitment they made, and they're asking for forgiveness and go ahead with that. Well, this is budget time. I would like to know where they plan to get $1.5 million to cover this that staff made the commitment to. And to me, that's not a small oversight. That's a large oversight in our budget.
Any other closing comments that you'd like to make, Ms. Farmer?
It is not and has not been my intention to draw fire, to single any one person out. It is a misstep that was discovered by me when I was looking into the monies that we have spent on the Hickory. I was very upset about the engineering fees being so excessive. And once I started uncovering and I came across the interlocal agreement and I remember the $100,000 max, nowhere to be in there, and then the refusal to let me see the documents pertaining to this, why refuse if you're not covering up something? It's that simple. Why did you cover it up? Even after I pointed it out and I called our mayor, when I saw the written proof, finally got the records on August 9th, I called our mayor to advise him of this. He was very grateful. He was very thankful and appreciative. And his comment at the time was they've been covering it up all this time. I thought he was happy with the progress, not the results, but at least we knew that the water fund had been charged for monies that the council didn't approve. And, you know, that's been his concern all along, is misuse of the water funds. And I thought I was assisting, thought I was helping. I certainly feel the obligation to my constituents and to the city. We've got in excess of the million, your number there, the 225 or something like that, $1,225,000 to add into our budget now to cover these expenses that was not in there. Were they going to continue? Because now it is on the agenda to ratify all the mistakes and to accept everything, but there is no mention of any type of disciplinary or what changes have been put in place to prevent this from happening again. Does this happen in everything and we just happen to uncover 2 instances this year? That's the question.
Something to think about. Ms. Farmer, thank you so much for your additional time.
Thank you.